Welcome on into the Wolverine.com podcast. Clayton Safey here with Chris Ballas and Anthony Broom on what was a snowy Thursday in Ann Arbor earlier today. Things are getting real here on November 21st as we look forward to Michigan's final home game of the season. We'll preview Michigan against Northwestern here and then Ohio State next week. Thanksgiving, things are moving fast. But if you are happy about Michigan's senior class going out with the most wins of any senior class in history, make sure to hit the like button if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel as well. And head to the Wolverine.com right now. You can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. So you'll finish off the season strong with us over at the Wolverine.com. Get behind the paywall on all of our articles. Become a member on our message board. You'll get through the season. You'll get the transfer portal, potential assistant coaching hires, all that over at the Wolverine.com right now. But Michigan coming into this one, searching for its sixth win of the year to guarantee bowl eligibility, 10.5-point favorite over Northwestern. Last I checked, Wolverines lead the all-time series 59-15-2. They've won the last 7. The most recent was in 2021. That was a 33-7 beatdown in late October. Northwestern needs a couple wins to achieve bowl eligibility. They're 4-6, 2-5 in the Big Ten. They've got wins over Miami, Ohio, Eastern Illinois, Maryland. Overtime victory at Purdue. They lost last week against Ohio State at Wrigley Field. But gentlemen, Michigan going for a 6th win here this weekend at the Big House.
Yeah, and Northwestern plays hard. They're not very good. As I'm writing in keys to the game right now, our Anthony Broom would call this a rock fight. And that's, I think, what we're headed to. But for some reason, guys, and I don't know what it is, I think the Michigan offense picks it up a little this week. I think that there are going to be guys motivated to play their best games in their last game at Michigan Stadium. Some seniors, maybe some juniors, maybe some underclassmen who guys are maybe going to hit the portal. That's just the reality of college football these days. But anytime you get to see Michigan play in the Big House, and it's going to be another year, guys, almost another year, 9 months till we get to see them again, you have to appreciate it. So a lot of people giving up their tickets. It's disappointing. But to me, it's going to come down to how the offense moves the ball on the ground. They got to do better. And I'm looking forward, of course, to Ohio State, but last chance to see these guys in the Big House, and I hope the seniors and the guys that help win this championship get the applause they deserve. What a class, what a group of guys, something that they've done something that, frankly, nobody else has ever done in Michigan history in modern era, and bring us a national championship undisputed. So it's been fantastic watching these guys play.
Yeah, hopefully, good weather, good response from the fan base on Saturday. That'd be a great way to start it off. Again, I think the further and further we get away from what last year was, you're really just focused on what the task at hand is here. And that's getting that 6th win, setting yourself up, not just getting it like, okay, yeah, the 6th win is great. But if you win this game, 19-17 on a walk-off field goal, is that, yeah, you got your 6th win, but is it something to feel good about? I don't know. I mean, this is it's a Northwestern team that Michigan's favored by 2 scores to beat. At this point, you're just taking the season for what it is. And what you want to see this week is a team as ready as it can possibly be to go into Columbus next week. And, again, what does that mean? Does that mean they only lose by a couple scores? Does it mean they only lose by a touchdown? Does it mean they're able to win the game? I don't know what that means, but I think there is a chance that, coming off the second bye week, coming off what they called buy-in week, that we do see a clean game. Because really the closest thing we've gotten to that this year, a wire-to-wire, good effort, good execution from this team was that Michigan State game. And that came with maybe one of the worst quarter of football they played all year in that first quarter. So the opportunity to put 4 quarters together is there. The opportunity to give yourself some life, give yourself some momentum going into the game next week, I think is the chief objective heading into Saturday.
Both teams looking for good vibes going into the rivalry games. Of course, Northwestern playing for the Land of Lincoln trophy against Illinois. Not quite as big, I would say, as Michigan's rivalry game against Ohio State next weekend in Columbus. But they still have a chance to make a bowl themselves with 2 more wins. But it will be cool to see this senior class go out with one final game at the Big House. The season's kind of flown by in a way, but there are 16 seniors on this team that were part of the 2021 recruiting class. Of course, some transferred away. J.J. McCarthy, Junior Colson left early for the NFL, but they have 45 wins, 8 losses, 5 of the losses coming this year. Of course, we all know the 40-3 stretch from 2021 to 2023. But as I said at the top, the winningest class in Michigan history, really a class that helped turn this thing around. They were the freshmen when Aiden Hutchinson and those guys were the seniors and kind of led the way. And then it was that trickle-down effect of seeing what those guys did, bringing your own energy, that kind of youthful energy that those guys brought, like Donovan Edwards and Rod Moore and all of them that first year, even Andrell Anthony, and then carrying it forward year by year, continuing to improve. You win 12 games, then 13, then 15 last season, culminating in the national championship. So one of the more important classes in Michigan football history, maybe the most important, at least in recent history. So I think those guys will be received really well at the Big House on Saturday. Also, AJ Henning will play his final game in the Big House in a Northwestern uniform. He, fifth-year senior, spent 3 years here at Michigan and is playing really well for Northwestern right now, wide receiver. So it'd be cool to see him, Josh Preeb, going up against his former team in Northwestern as well. So a couple interesting storylines that I think are going to become more and more common as the you can transfer without sitting out now the last few years as that continues to become more prominent. But let's dive right into this matchup. We'll start with Michigan's offense against the Northwestern defense. But before we do, we got to talk about our friends over at Prizepicks. It's the most fun way to watch sports with Prizepicks. You can win up to 100 times your money this football season, this basketball season. You just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. It's a great way to test your skills as a fan. It's simple and easy to play. You can make your picks, submit your entry in less than 20 seconds. And we have a special offer for you for Prizepicks Daily Fantasy. Go to prizepicks.com or the Prizepicks app. Use the code Wolverine to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. Again, go to prizepicks.com or the Prizepicks app. Use the code Wolverine to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play $5 in lineups. I got a couple picks this week. I'm sticking with Thursday Night Football. Cleveland Browns wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, more than 47.5 receiving yards, and Steelers quarterback Russell Wilson, more than 187.5 passing yards tonight. I'll also be making some picks on Saturday once I see some of those projections come out as well. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed as long as you use the promo code Wolverine. It's Prizepicks Daily Fantasy Sports made easy. The Michigan offense, been waiting for it to get going really all season, but coming off of a bye, going against the Northwestern defense, it's the stronger side of the ball for Northwestern. Still not a great unit. They've limited big plays this year. They have stopped the run pretty effectively. Teams only averaging 3.6 yards per carry against them. What do you guys expect out of this Michigan offense against the Northwestern defense?
About the same we've seen, frankly. I really hope to see the running game be a little bit better. I expect with a bye week that these guys are going to be a little healthier and maybe push some more people off the ball. Hopefully, Sharon Moore spent some time with that offensive line because whatever they've been doing to this point really hasn't worked. And that's been the biggest disappointment of the year. You can talk about quarterback play. We all kind of knew what to expect, right? From the quarterbacks, that it wasn't going to be great, but it could be okay if you get great line play and you get a great running game going. But they've had none of that, and a lot of that is because of the guys up front. Davis Warren, 61.8% pressures at Indiana is absurd. So to me, I think you're going to see they're going to have to take some shots, and this is one of the keys to the game I wrote. And Sharon Moore kind of touched on this in his press conference because he said we're going to have to get over their safeties' heads a few times, and they just haven't been able to do that. I can't think of one play all year, can you, where they've gotten the ball when a receiver's gotten behind the last line of defense, whether it was completed or not. Yeah, the one there was Fred Moore in the opener, and it was underthrown, and then Colston Loveland was wide open, and Alex Orji threw it to the wrong guy. So other than that, there's just been no downfield passing game. But I think this is where you have to take some shots. And I do think that Northwestern's going to be able to slow Michigan's running game. And anxious to see who gets the carries this week. Hopefully, Kalel Mullings gets a few on senior day in the first half this time. But I'd like to see Jordan Marshall get some carries too, and Micah Kapana. So we'll see. But to me, it's just move the ball and don't turn it over. I'm glad they aren't turning the ball over anymore. I guess that's what I'll say.
To start, right? The more you hold on to the ball, I mean, the better the chance that you are able to put drives together and score and do some of those things. Although they'll test you, they'll test your patience in that regard too, as we've seen most of the year. But yeah, I'm with you. I think that when you look at Northwestern's defensive line, I don't see a lot in terms of production, in terms of these big physical guys that could give you a hard time. This is kind of a matchup tailor-made for you to get back to the meat and potatoes of what you want to be in controlling the line of scrimmage and finding ways to run the football. And there's been maybe a little more buzz over the last week or so in terms of maybe them finding ways to get Micah Kapana involved as opposed to Jordan Marshall, who I think certainly has a role too, as we've seen as a kick returner and things like that. But I do hope that it is that two-headed monster of Donovan Edwards, Kalel Mullings. We've kind of pounded the table all year for Kalel being that top guy. It has been 1A and 1B. Although, the last couple games here, Kalel has kind of moved, trended away a bit, but they got to find ways to get both of those guys going. It's hard for Donovan Edwards to hit home runs when there's not a lane you can drive a Mack truck through. And it's hard for Kalel Mullings to break tackles when the second you get past the line of scrimmage or get to the line of scrimmage, there's a guy right there in your face. So, Northwestern, it looks like they have, a stout secondary. But again, it's a Michigan passing game that hasn't shown an ability to do much of anything with what they've had this year. So to me, their offensive success comes from finding a way to run the ball and then feeding Colston Loveland, the 15 to 20 targets a game he should probably get at this point.
That seems that'd be kind of interesting. You guys have both mentioned Micah Kapana. Are you guys both smashing the over on half a rushing attempt for Micah Kapana?
I would. When they are mentioned on the Monday night show by Sharon Moore, you see something happen, and I think he was mentioned on the Monday night show, if I'm not mistaken, as a guy that they'd like to get some carries. So I would smash that, and I'd hit that hard.
Sure, why not? Nothing else has made sense this year, so
all right.
Yeah. Sometimes when freshmen get mentioned, I feel like they get grouped in, like with the other freshmen. Like you ask about Jordan Marshall, and then a player will talk about, him and Micah Kapana. I took it more as that, but I mean, that would be really interesting if it's like, hey, you didn't like that we played Ben Hall over Kalel Mullings? Well, here's Micah Kapana, Jordan Marshall, Ben Hall, Donovan Edwards.
I didn't say play him over him. Didn't say play him over him. I said get the veterans their carries early and then start wearing them down. Let the young guys get a couple carries, and hopefully by the end of the game when they're up 3 scores, Clay, then you can let those young guys take it home. So,
that would be my prediction. If they
that'd be
get
nice.
It, they're up big.
It'd be nice.
It's like the stat that I kept pulling out for Leon Franklin last year, where I think Michigan's like 12-0 when he has a carry. It means you are up pretty big. Nice. Or maybe down pretty big, but they hardly ever lost any games during Leon's still on the team, but during that stretch of his career when he actually got to play. So maybe that will be the case. Maybe the Mike.
Are you telling me the secret ingredient to this season has been there all along?
They could have just started him, and then you're good. It's like the Duncan Robinson. You get him to 6 points, you're fine. So yeah, I do think the one thing I want to see is, Chris, the stat you mentioned earlier with how bad the pass protection was against Indiana. It was as bad as I've ever seen. And that's a really good Indiana defensive line. I think there is talent there. I mean, they have, that Kamara is like leading the Big Ten in sacks and pressures. CJ West, who Michigan almost got out of the transfer portal from Kent State, was a game wrecker in that game. But part of that had to be on the Michigan offensive line as well. Davis Warren was running for his life. This Northwestern defensive line, not as good. They're only pressuring the quarterback 20.6% of the time, so 40% less than what Michigan saw against Indiana, at least in that game against their own offensive line. But hopefully they can protect Davis Warren a little bit more, let him get in more of a rhythm, because we saw him when they protected him well against Michigan State and Oregon, then he was able to make some plays. It kind of goes back to what Doug Skeen always talks about. No one touches the quarterback, especially early in the game. You got to let him ease himself into the football game, and then you kind of, then maybe he'll make some bigger plays as the game goes on, as opposed to the exact opposite of what happened there, where things kind of spiraled for Davis Warren against Indiana. A couple notes on the Northwestern side of things. Xander Muller, their fourth leading tackler, probably not going to play. Didn't sound too optimistic from David Braun this week. And then Theron Johnson, their best corner, 10 pass breakups, 2 picks this week, is looking better this week. He says that he's likely to give it a go. He missed last week's game against Ohio State. Honestly, Northwestern's defense played okay against the Buckeyes. They actually moved the ball on the other side too. We'll talk about them right now. I guess that's a good transition. They moved the ball. They didn't finish drives. They had the fumble on the first drive against the Buckeyes. Jack Lausch, their quarterback, who took over in game 3 this year. Up and down year, kind of similar to Michigan, where you got to make a quarterback change. You bring in a guy with not much experience. He runs around like crazy back there. And, it's kind of interesting. Like, you just never know where a play is going to go once this guy starts running around. He has some scramble yards this year. He throws a lot on the move. He also will run some design runs. He did make a couple plays down the field against Ohio State last week. He will push it down the field. He's got 9.1 yard average depth of target. That's 6th in the Big Ten this season. So they don't hit on many of them, but he's not afraid to take some risks, take some downfield shots. So Michigan secondary got to be on high alert. They got to be disciplined in their pass rush lanes as well, to make sure he doesn't get those open throwing lanes. But, I think Michigan's defense should eat here.
I would think so too. I'd be disappointed if Northwestern scored more than 10 points in this game, frankly. Now, maybe they'll get a few more possessions because of the Michigan offense. Hopefully not. But these guys aren't very good. I don't think there's any other way to say it where it's a little more polite. They're just not very good. So shut down the running game. And the passing lane thing is the biggest thing to me, right? It gets deflating when you're 3rd and 8 and you let a quarterback get out and maybe have an extra time to find somebody downfield or pick up a first down with his yardage, with his feet. So that's, to me, the key to this game, and one of the keys to this game that I was actually writing about just before we went on this podcast. So, that's to me is critical. I don't think they've been great at that this year. At times they have, but I thought they did a decent job with Aiden Childs, right, for the most part against Michigan State. But other games they have not. So, but they've had 2 weeks to prepare. The last time that comes to mind that they, just off the top of my head, that they had 2 weeks to prepare for Northwestern was a 54-51 loss in 2000 when Jim Herman's defense got absolutely shredded. I don't expect that to happen this year. Never say never, but we'll see. To me, I like this Michigan defense to really keep this Northwestern offense in check.
I would think so as well. I think that second half against Indiana in particular, and people will attach, caveats to, oh, maybe Indiana's not as good as we think they were. And we'll talk about Indiana, Ohio State here in a little bit. But I think that what we've seen from them since the first bye week, with maybe the exception of the Oregon game, just because that's a completely different beast when it comes to the types of things they do. And you were down both starting corners in that game. I have been, maybe impressed isn't the word, because we know what the bar is from what we've seen from these last few defenses. But when you look at Michigan's defensive line in particular, it's the one unit on this team that I think in every matchup you play is a complete non-negotiable advantage that you have, especially if all 4 of those guys are playing together and, it's working with the guys rotating in and out. So to me, again, to speak to Chris's point earlier, could this be a rock fight? Yeah, but I just don't see this Northwestern offense moving the ball up and down the field a ton against this Michigan defense. I'm still skeptical. Like, I don't think we'll see Will Johnson this weekend, but I think what they have is enough. And I think that, that there'll be a bit of a lift from that being the last home game of the year. So, especially, it's senior day, but it's also it's kind of junior day in a to a certain respect too. I mean, it's probably going to be the last time. It will be, as far as I'm concerned, the last time we see Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant. On the other side of the ball, Colston Loveland. Would love to see Will Johnson, but it's going to be a bit of a send off for those guys as well. And I expect them to play up to it.
Me too.
No doubt. I was actually going to mention that as well. It's not just the senior class. It's a lot of guys younger that have really high draft grades that are going to be likely in their last game in the big house. And you mentioned it too with the defensive line. Next week at Ohio State, things get a little more interesting with how banged up that offensive line is. You never know. You get to Will Howard, who's pretty good, not great. Obviously, we'll talk more about that one next week, and they have a huge game this weekend, as you mentioned, Anthony, against Indiana. But, this D-line coming off a bye, a little more fresh. They have given it their all season long. I do think they have a chance here in the next couple weeks to really, really do something. That would also include this weekend keeping Cam Porter at bay. Anthony, I was going to mention, he wins the Perry Ellis Award for just being in the Big Ten forever, being in college sports forever. But he just feels like he's been around for so long. He's been solid, nothing crazy. They got a couple decent receivers. Henning's one of them, leads the team with 45 catches. He only had 25 in 3 years at Michigan. He's got 90 over the last 2 seasons for Northwestern. And then really, frankly, Michigan could use him, but I don't blame him for going back home. He got his Michigan degree, and he really wasn't being used as much of a downfield threat at all. And then Bryce Kurtz for them has been a really good receiver. So if Lausch can kind of run around and buy himself enough time, he can find some guys here and there. But anything else before we move on to our predictions, our players of the game and all that?
Stunned that nobody has brought up the trophy.
Yeah, true.
Is it the George Jewett Trophy?
Yeah.
What it is? Yeah.
That's correct.
You're stunned no one brought it up, but you were questioning how to say it.
I was being sarcastic. Everybody gets a trophy named after him now or something, and that's I don't mean that at all. Obviously, there's a reason for the trophy, but it's kind of one of the stranger ones, right? Just because it's not really a rivalry game of any sort.
It's funny you say it's not one of the stranger ones, but there's literally a trophy. Michigan plays for a jug and a miniature Paul Bunyan every year.
That's fair. Okay. And what I meant really was the rivalry, to have a trophy for this game more than anything. And I understand the significance, of course, with Mr. Jewett. So that's great. But to me, what's the next one, guys? What's the next trophy game for Michigan? What are they going to add next? We're going to have to think about that.
I don't know, something with USC or something like that.
Yeah, who knows? So anyway, but hopefully keep that guy home wherever they keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't want to leave this. I mean, the one, I can't even call it a saving grace, but this season could have been worse. Could have lost the jug. You could have lost Paul Bunyan. So keeping both of those in Ann Arbor and keeping this third one, the George Jewett Trophy in Ann Arbor, it's critical. And for as much as, we might even poke fun at it, I mean, it is there is pride around these trophy games with those guys in the building. So I hope to see them play up this weekend.
No doubt. George Jewett, the first African-American to play at either institution, played in the 1890s. It is weird because it's not a rivalry. It's cool, but yeah, it's like, and they've only played once for it. So it's so new. You don't see traditions like this start like in this day and age. It's just not like that era right now.
No.
But this is one of those few occurrences, and they'll hope to keep it home this weekend here against Northwestern. Let's make our predictions for this game. But before we do, let's talk about our sponsor, Gametime. They're the exclusive ticketing partner of the Wolverine podcast. It's the easiest way to get tickets to the biggest games, concerts, or shows, including Creed, which you guys both saw this week. You can go get tickets for all sorts of concerts. I mean, you see it there on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. Pretty much any event you can think of. You go to Gametime. The app is super easy to use. All sorts of features. You can see, not to call anyone else out, but better fees, in my opinion, on Gametime. And you can see a picture of what your seat's going to look like before you make a decision on some of your tickets. So they have the lowest price guarantee, the event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. You can use the promo code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. That's ON, the numeral 3 for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Terms apply. Download Gametime today. Let's get to our offensive player of the game predictions. I can start us off here. I am going to go. I know we talked about the running back carries earlier. I'm going to go with Khalil Mullings. John Jansen asked on Monday night to Sharon Moore, kind of like maybe giving him a little nudge, like, are we going to see Khalil Mullings more in this game? And Sharon Moore said, yeah, absolutely. I think it only makes sense. I think we'll see a lot of Donovan Edwards as well, but Khalil Mullings deserves more carries. I think we've kind of plowed that ground in recent podcasts. And I think his last game in the Big House will be a pretty strong performance.
I'm going with Colston Loveland in his last game in the Big House. That's just an easy one. Frankly, week after week, you always have a chance, right? Because he's option 1A, 1B, and 1C. So that's my pick this week.
Going to go with a man who has had no shortage of big runs, big moments, maybe the headlining guy that you send out this weekend, Donovan Edwards, with a couple big runs on Saturday.
Okay. I like it. The jinx is over, so I'm not even going to say anything.
We're so far beyond jinx at this point this year.
It's fair. Defensive player of the game. Anthony, start us off. We'll go the other way around.
Defensive player of the game. I'm going to go with Kenneth Grant. I feel like he's a guy that, obviously we know how good Mason Graham has been week in and week out. Just one more tip of the cap to Kenneth Grant. I think he's played almost as well as Mason has this year. Two guys who will be first-round picks this spring.
I'm going with Josiah Stewart in his last game as a Wolverine, and I think he's going to get some pressure, and I think he's going to do some things in there. He's my pick.
I'm going with Mason Graham in his last game. A nice send-off for him. He's like the Colston Loveland of the offense, where it's a safe pick when you take him. I'm going to be just cherishing every last snap we get to watch of Mason Graham. He's got to be one of the all-time favorites, I think, for sure, for a lot of Michigan fans out there. I can start us off with my X factor. So, guys, we have a quarterback that's going to be running around. He's going to try to find some throwing lanes. He's going to keep his eyes downfield. He's going to try to run a little bit. There's a guy who's going to be licking his chops. Number one, Jayshon Barham. I think he's going to, if you spy him on Jack Lausch, I think, he'll be able to kind of hide back there and maybe make a play if he tries to scramble. So I'm going to go with Jayshon.
Just play to the whistle, young man. Don't go any further. That's
the
all
echo of the whistle.
Yes, exactly. The echo of the whistle. And then you'll be okay. So my X factor is Tommy Doman. He needs to have a big day in a game like this. I think that there are going to be a lot of punts. Can't have the short kicks. Otherwise, it's going to keep this a game. Tommy Doman needs to step up and have a big game on Saturday. I think he will.
Ooh, X Factor. How about this one? A little off the board this week. We talked to Mason Curtis this week. It was recruited as a linebacker, then was in the edge room, and they tried him at wide receiver in spring ball. And now he's playing safety, and I think a guy that they're going to want to get an extra look at here, not only these last two regular season games, but during bowl season as well. The ball skills, the size, the safety position is just not something that is that easy to find. So I'm excited to see how he grows, and I think he'll make a big play on Saturday.
He's listed at 6'5". Anthony, what was your estimated? He's got the big hair, so it's hard to tell. Maybe it is the hair. He looked like he might be taller than that. It was just insane for a safety.
Yeah. We have the frame of reference of also going back and forth to basketball. So
right.
I think
yeah.
I think he could play small forward for Dusty May tonight and probably be pretty good at it, for being honest. I think he's a legit 6'5", super lanky still. I think you put some muscle on him, I think he's going to be a really good player. I
agree. Final scores. I can start off here. I got Michigan 22, Northwestern 10. I don't know how they're going to get to 22. I don't know why they're going to get to 22. They're going to get to 22. And Michigan wins by 12. So I guess that's covering the spread.
I wouldn't bet against it the way Clay's been betting this year. So I'm going to go 30-10. I think Michigan puts it together and has its most complete game of the year going into Ohio State. understanding what's at stake next week. And last game in the big house, just a gut feeling. I said last night, or in the staff picks, that could be the Mexican I ate last night too, but that's my gut feeling.
I said 31-10. Again, just a gut feeling, which those haven't served me well. I picked this team to win 10 games when we put the football preview together. But yeah, 31-10. Play a clean game. Don't turn over the football, and give yourself something to hang your hat on going into Columbus next week.
Yep.
The penultimate regular season game the last couple of weeks, which I love just saying that word. I had to get it in. Last couple years. You have the Illinois game in 2022. You have the Maryland game in 2023. But those were when you were rolling, and then you kind of had a little bit of a clunker that you were able to survive in. Maybe this is the opposite. Like you guys are saying, they put it together when they really haven't been able to all year, and then you feel good going into Ohio State. I'm starting to become of the belief that the week before Ohio State has no bearing on how that game plays out. But as you guys just said there, like the vibes will be better if you can play, your best game of the year, even though it's against a weaker opponent, and come out and just kind of have some more confidence going down there. I'm going to write about this next week, but there are a bunch of guys on this Michigan team that have made big plays in Ohio Stadium. So you get them revved up a little bit. I think that could go a long way. We'll see if they're able to keep it close down there. But and I guess that leads us into our final segment. No man knows the future. Pick 5 games here in the college football slate. And we will start with Ohio State. They're hosting Indiana. Ohio State's a 13.5-point favorite. Over-under is 51.5 noon on Fox, one of the games of the day. Indiana's covered pretty much every game this year except the Michigan game. Ohio State, a little banged up on the offensive line. I'm still taking Ohio State. I vowed to do this, Chris, when we were going back to the hotel after the Indiana game. I just was not impressed. I think Ohio State finds a way to make a statement, and then we're all going to be arguing about if Indiana could get in or not.
I think Indiana's going to cover, and I think they're going to give them all they can handle. I don't think they were looking past Michigan, but as Signetti said, he said that we did not play well, and I agree with that. They're a better football team than that. So I like Indiana to be in a fourth quarter game with the Buckeyes.
And we all know what happens when you get the Buckeyes into a 4-quarter game if you have the horses to bring them down. So I'm also going to pick Indiana. I think that I don't think Indiana's as good as maybe their early season start indicated. And to be frank with you, I don't think Ohio State's as good as their season is indicated either. I think that you get them in a physical game, you get them in a game where they're unsure of themselves, and I just don't think they have it up front on both sides of the ball. But maybe Indiana doesn't either. But I do think Indiana will cover. Ohio State wins, but Indiana will keep it close.
Next game with Big 12 championship game implications on the line. BYU at Arizona State. Arizona State is a 3-point favorite. Over-unders 48.5. Both teams still alive to make the Big 12 championship game, to make the college football playoff, of course. People are like, Vegas is just begging you to keep taking BYU. They knew that eventually they were going to lose. They did last week to Kansas. I'm going to go Arizona State. I think they're playing pretty well, and BYU was kind of on thin ice there for a while.
Yeah, they were fortunate to beat Utah, frankly, and I like Arizona State at home as well. I think Arizona State's going to handle them, honestly. 10-point win.
I'll go Arizona State as well. Shout out to, I believe, former Michigan State quarterback Sam Leavitt they're led by.
They are. And he honestly looked like the most impressive one out of that group when we saw him last year against Michigan, I thought, and he's having a good year. So
nobody runs off good quarterbacks like Michigan State.
They've got a couple decent ones around the country.
Over the years they have, right?
Yeah,
so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, the what's his name for the Eagles?
Yeah, I know.
That won the Super Bowl.
I know who you're talking about. He's so forgettable. However, he did go to Michigan
Napoleon
State.
Dynamite.
Yeah, and they tried to take credit for him. And congratulations, whoever you are.
Here's a picture of him at a spring game.
Yeah, exactly.
That's actually what they were doing. Yeah,
I know, it's classic.
Next game, Army at Notre Dame. This one with some playoff implications as well. Notre Dame cannot afford to lose. Army is in the AAC championship game. If they win that, they got a good shot at making the playoff. Notre Dame is a 14.5-point favorite in South Bend. Over under is 44.5. This one's 7 o'clock on NBC. I'm going with Notre Dame. I feel like, Army is tough, but they already did it against Navy and beat them pretty handily. I think they're just going to do the same thing, continue to roll against a really weak schedule.
I think you're probably right, unfortunately, but God bless America. Go get them, boys.
Yes.
Do the best you can and make us proud.
I'll be the one that supports the troops then. I will take
right.
Army. I think that this is a perfect laydown spot for Notre Dame, given that apparently I just saw this before we started recording. Some teams in the NFL are kicking around the idea of Marcus Freeman as an NFL head coaching candidate. I think that this weekend we'll be reminded why he probably isn't one.
Or Brian Kelly gets fired at LSU. Maybe
back.
Marcus Freeman leaves for LSU.
bring Brian back to Notre Dame.
Yeah, just do a little swap. That'd be the funniest outcome, maybe. Let's move on to the next game. We got two more. Alabama at Oklahoma. Alabama is a 13.5-point road favorite. Over-under is 47.5. 7:30 on ABC. I placed a future this morning on Alabama to win the national championship at plus 800. I thought it was good odds. They beat Mercer last week, and you would think, okay, tune up. They'll start rolling here. Last couple games, SEC, they always do this. It's kind of BS. They have not covered last 3 years in this spot coming off of that cupcake game in November. So I'm going to pick Oklahoma to keep it within a couple scores here.
I like Alabama to roll. I think they win by 3 scores or more.
I'm with Chris. I think Oklahoma is terrible. And next year's game, Michigan at Oklahoma, that could be very important for the coaches on each side of that matchup.
It could, and the rosters will look nothing like they look right now. It'll be interesting to track like everyone, Michigan and who they play next year and how the transfer portal evolves here starting in December. Last game, this is a Big Ten rivalry game. I don't think we would have picked it unless they were, in the Big Ten, which they are now. USC at UCLA. I don't know if you guys know, both these schools are in LA. USC is a 4.5-point favorite. Over/under is 51.5. 10:30 on NBC. I like that. Like a late start. As we're working on some post-game coverage here, I'm going to go with UCLA. They've been playing a lot better, and I just do not trust USC right now.
Is it a trophy game? What's the trophy?
Yeah, I don't know. Do they have a trophy?
Yeah, who knows? We'll figure it out. Megan maybe can get on that.
It's called the You Are Here trophy.
You Are Here trophy. There you go.
LA.
I'm going to go with USC. I still don't think UCLA is very, very good or well coached.
I'm going to go with UCLA. It's a home game, but as we know, Rose Bowl not really always the friendliest home atmosphere for them. Crosstown rivalry. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my rear end at this point. We'll go with the Bruins.
Bruins have covered 6 of their last 8 games. They've been improving, and if they win this game, they do get a trophy. It's the victory bell, is what they get. According to Wikipedia. So
there you have it.
Right on.
We'll see if they can capture that. That's our show for this week. We'll be at the Big House on Saturday. Hope to see people there. Also, Michigan basketball tonight. Michigan recruiting heating up. I think everybody knows a lot's going on that front as well. So get in on the action over at thewolverine.com. Use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of premium access for just $1. Like the video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel as well, and we'll see everyone next time.